Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. It's Jason from Outcome Health. Sorry about the delay in the start. We were doing other bits and pieces, and of course the time ticked along, and before we knew it, hey presto, it was time for Polar Working Group. Shane, are you there today as well?
I am. Unfortunately, I'm on my phone as a hotspot because they've taken my internet down.
No worries.
Um,
Exactly. Internet issues. I was thinking, Shane, today, I suppose, given the fact that PIP-QI has been such a hot topic, and of course, with the exemption, do you want to cover, shall we cover a little bit about how we're handling that from Outcome Health perspective and Polar?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think definitely PIP-QI is very topical. I know that a lot of PHNs have been very busy getting those practices up and running before the exemption runs out tomorrow night at midnight, being the 15th. So I suppose for us, we're happy to take questions. We'd be very happy to take questions on any of your outstanding queries around PIP-QI. There are a couple of different ways that it's been handled. So hopefully you've been in the communication loops with your PHNs around some different approaches. Outcome Health have two approaches for PIP-QI. We have the Hummingbird installation, where we have the practice level data that comes across as part of the general polar reporting world, and therefore PIP-QI is one of the reports that you get, as well as clinic summary, clinical indicators, and hospitalisation risk and the like. However, there's also a separate approach that's been developed called the aggregated file approach, or the JSON file. That's not Jason as in me, it's JSON as in JSON. But that's to support practices who we may not have compliance software for, or who opt to submit that aggregated file. So hopefully PHNs have been aware of that process is now being supported so that you can submit that JSON file. And basically you'll still get some reporting capabilities from Polar. So what does that look like? What I might do is bear with me while I quickly bring up a diagram. Anyone who knows me and knows me well knows that I'm very, very fond of a diagram, and I'll actually get some questions as well. Feel free to ask questions. Shane, did you want to monitor questions as well as me, and we'll just see if there's anything that pops up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll have a bit of a recap about PIP-QI today, and also take some questions, talk about the release has been out there for a little while now. And actually, we're about to start. We're in our new development release for December. So this is our last release for the year. So we'll probably cover off on some of the things we're thinking of adding to that release as well. Some things to look forward to, as that we always call it the Christmas release. It's our last present to you for being such fantastic collaborators for us this year. It's been a long year for everyone, so we always like to have those extra little things towards a December release as a Christmas present from Polar. But let me just bear with me for a moment while I just quickly jump onto a document, or I should say not a document, but a graph of how PIP-QI is handled so that we can answer any questions around that. Excuse me, sorry. I should have been a bit more prepared, but time ticked along a bit faster than we expected, so we'll get there. Okay, and feel free to put your hand up if you have any particular questions that you'd want to cover off as well. But let's have a look at this. Okay. So what I might do is a bit of a quick recap. Okay, I'll share my screen. Excuse me. Share. Oh, host is disabled sharing. Shane, can I please share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Give that a go.
Excellent. Sensational. Let me try again. Take two. Excellent. So if that has worked, this is called Tech Update, but it's basically a bit of an update on what PIP-QI is all about. So these are some of the big projects of this year. So hopefully you've seen a PowerPoint presentation in front of you. But as you can see, what I'm trying to explain there is the diagram about how we support PIP-QI now. So for most Polar sites, you have what's called a Hummingbird installation, which supplies a patient level extract. Now, as part of the new specifications issued by the government only a couple of months ago now, they will also accept an JSON file approach, which can once again be uploaded to us, or it's supported via your PHN as well. Both of those avenues of data, whether it be a patient level or an aggregated file, goes into our PIP-QI metrics engine, which is what the BI team's been busily developing. And then it goes into our Polar data warehouse, which is where PIP-QI data sits. And then finally, it will go into a reporting mechanism, which will go out to PHNs and TAHW and the like. From a status of where we're at, we have MedTech integration now for Polar. So you have a patient level extract, and we're currently working on the Genie integration for PIP-QI as well. So that's currently in a development train, and that's looking to have it out by the January quarter. That's January 2021. So that's a bit about how PIP-QI is functioning and working. So if you have any questions about any of that, please feel free to raise a hand. But that's been a very big piece of development work for us over the last, well, I suppose if you think about it, PIP-QI started a couple of years back, but in the short period of the last couple of months about supporting this aggregated file approach just down here in regards to a JSON file. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share there. What I might now do is we might do a bit of a recap. Are there any questions around the release? We know that the September release has been out for a little while now. Just wanted to see if there's anything that's outstanding from the audience around how that's working and other bits and pieces there. If not, we can probably, I might touch base about some of the things that will be hopefully on our development cycle for December. As I said, our last cycle for the year. So let me just stop sharing this for a moment. Sorry. Apologies, as I clear my throat. So one of the big things that came out of some work out of the last release was some changes to clinical indicators. Now, let me bring up clinical indicators just to refresh everyone's memory. I shouldn't have stopped sharing, Shane. Probably would have been easier. Exactly. I'll get there. Apologies. It's been a long year, but no worries. Let me just quickly bring up the demo reports and start sharing again. Okay. Right. Oh, where am I? Nearly there. Share screen. Okay. Excellent. So you've probably seen some demo tiles there, hopefully in front of you. What I'm going to do is bring up our good old friend clinical indicators. So this is a report that we normally spruik as a slightly advanced report, as in it doesn't have any visualizations, but it's very, very powerful on how you can get to a very finite patient cohort because it supports a couple of different features that are not currently supported in Clinic Summary, which is your other report. That being, you can exclude patients from the search criteria, such as using your exclusion filters. And the other big difference here is it supports this combination of and clauses. So I won't cover too much old ground, but you can see here you can have SNOMED and SNOMED and SNOMED. So you can look for patient cohorts to have three in this instance diagnosis, which makes it very powerful because it gets into really finite numbers. What we did as part of the last release is we added a lot of love to clinic indicators where we added a whole heap of demographic information, so additional filtering. We also did some work, I think, on immunizations where we added some, excuse me, we added some sequencing. So you can then search on immunization sequencing and a range of things. But in actually doing that, we also learned that we redeveloped the way clinical indicators works in regards to the functionality to make it a lot faster and just to accommodate those filters. So in doing that, we've discovered that we could potentially bring that together so that it's a more aligned with the Clinic Summary report. So some of the development we're posting or hoping to do in that development release is a merging of the reports so that there's an exclusion component to Clinic Summary. But stay tuned, that's some of the exciting work that we've been discussing with PHNs as part of our usability groups. But hopefully that'll mean that you'll be able to, one of the issues that we currently find is that when you start doing some reports in Clinic Summary, for example, you'll start adding filters and then you'll realize that you need to exclude something. And that's a bit frustrating. So when that happens, you generally go, I should have started off in clinical indicators. So what we're hoping to do is to take away that pain of you then putting filter A, B, C, and then realizing you need to exclude and saying, okay, time to close Clinic Summary, go back into clinical indicators. What we're trying to do is actually put this exclusion into Clinic Summary. So it'll just be another tab. So we're very excited about the potential for that work coming on board in December. So stay tuned and we'll definitely get that out to you as we know more as part of the regular routine and collaboration with PHNs and testing that we do. Other big things, Shane, from the December release. I don't want to give too much away. We always normally like it to be a bit of a surprise, but I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
Look, I think anything anything else that we bring up will pale in comparison to that functionality. Be able to do it all in a single report will really change how the data is worked with across the board. So yeah,
Exactly.
big change.
It is, and I'm a self-confessed data nerd. I'm not going to hide it. And when we realised that this was the way we could produce these reports or bring these two reports together, I was incredibly excited. It gave a few screams of excitement around our place. And when we mentioned it to our PHNs to say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Once again, it was also very well received because, as I said, I think we've all been bitten by that filter 1, filter 2, or filter 3 in clinic summary. Then, I want to get rid of these patients. Sorry, I can't do it. So hopefully that'll avoid those kind of painful having to swap between reports in the future. So it is definitely a good move forward. I'm just trying to remember. There's some interesting concepts around data quality is always a really big thing that we're working on. So I think we want to try and do some enhancements to potentially diagnosis to allow you to look at some of maybe the map diagnosis as well in clinic summary. But stay tuned. We'll definitely be in contact more once we get further into that development cycle about what's going to be in that release. So it's exciting times ahead. Just trying to think, Shane, anything else or any other feedback from the audience around how they've been using Polar, anything that's come out of the September release? I know September may seem like a long time ago, but it's not that long. Let's just do a bit of a recap.
I can't believe we're already past September, let alone into half of October, but there you go.
Exactly right. Well, at least it's a beautiful day here in Melbourne, sunny and shiny, which is nice. So it's good. Warmer weather is definitely on its way. So let's look at clinic summary there. So as a bit of a recap, and of course, please feel free to stop us and ask questions anytime you like. But one of the pages that got lots of love and attention, and you can always tell that whenever you see a beta next to the menu item there, for example, diagnosis beta, you can basically say that that page has been under a whole heap of development and it's been released in a kind of testing phase. The beta will normally stay for one release cycle while we get practices to extensively put it through its paces and then report back any issues that they may come across. Hopefully there are no issues and that beta gets removed. So if you ever do see that beta, just know that it's probably a page that's been given a fair bit of love and redevelopment. I'm just trying to think if there's any more betas in there, but I think that was the last one from last release.
We did have the redesign of the quality page as well, of course, because we had the disco lights.
Oh, this was a personal favorite, this one, and a big thank you to one of the PHNs that raised it. I will bring this up. This is actually going to get a little bit of attention in the next release just to make it a little bit more easier to navigate. I don't know if you know much about the Polar structure, but I'll give you a bit of a quick 101. So we work extensively with our customers to PHNs, and we do a whole heap of collaborative co-design and development work. And so basically we meet with the PHNs on what we call usability. And usability is about us understanding how the practices are using Polar and what things are good, what things aren't good, and more importantly, what things would be better to have or maybe we consider as additional development into the future. Excuse me one moment. So we basically work in these usability spaces. So some of the feedback that comes via usability will then make its way into a development because the PHNs have been aware that, hey, this may not be working the way we anticipate it to. So in the end, this page before the last release was flashing at people. It was we were surprised, and it was because the visualizations were trying to refresh so quickly that it was having the appear that the bars were actually flashing, disappearing, appearing, and it was actually quite annoying, for want of a better word. Shane, would you think of any other words other than annoying? It was
disorienting and also potentially
yeah, it was a bit like a strobe light, wasn't it? It was
exactly,
it was a little bit hard. So luckily we picked up on it, and that was considered a bug because it was. So we quickly did a redevelopment around this page here, so hopefully that makes it a bit easier. But some of the fantastic feedback that came via usability at the last meeting was that it's not always intuitive that you need to click here to see the patients. We've added some filters up here to quickly refine the cohort to an RACGP accreditation standards, to RACGP active, to patient status active, and also some custom filters around age. But if I quickly just apply, excuse me, sorry.
And if you don't
RACGP
mind, also
accreditation standard.
just hovering over that little information button there as well, Jason, just to show exactly what it's doing.
Oh, of course, yeah. You know that we're very big fans of hover text. So anyone who's used hospitalization risk knows that hover text is an awesome thing. So yeah, we try to put that into as many reports as possible. Thanks, Shane, for reminding me about that. But what we're trying to do in this instance is just show you that when you select that button, it's automatically applying those filters for you. Okay, so rather than needing to go through to various different pages to do it, the button takes the pain out of it for you. So it's automatically saying, hey, you've got your RACGP active here. These patients are greater than or equal to 10 for smoking. They are greater than or equal to 15 for alcohol. And finally, greater than or equal to 18 for BMI. Okay, so just as a bit of a quick one. But when you supply that filter, or sorry, select that filter, the feedback we got is it wasn't always intuitive, Ed, to know, well, where do I see the missing Indigenous status here? So basically, we used to have a quite clear text there that says click here to review patients or click here to select patients. We removed that to try and get a little bit more real estate, but the plan is to bring that back to make it a little bit more usable. At the moment, just for your feedback, you would click on the visualization, okay, and it would then go through and apply that for you. Okay, and of course, then you would use your patient list function as it just goes through to retrieve those patients.
Just going to there was a question just come through around why it doesn't actually also apply practice status active. If I may just quickly field that one. The accreditation standards themselves actually make no mention of practice active. They only refer to RACGP active. So we left it out because if you want to go by the word of the law, it is just that RACGP active. You can, however, just quickly click, and if you don't mind, Jason, that practice status active, sure. You can quickly click that button, and that will then also apply practice status active for you.
And you can see that your patient cohort dropped when that filter was applied. Excellent. So now we have the filters, of course. We've said we wanted to look at all the people missing an Indigenous status recording. I clicked on the bar, and of course, all roads lead to the patient list, where you would see your patient list. You can export that list out, and they're the patients that you would start working with in regards to that quality measure. But that's yeah, thank you for that. Please keep the questions coming. I love questions, Shane and I, so feel free to ask as many as you like, but hopefully that clarifies. These are strictly around the accreditation standards as listed by the RACGP, but you can, of course, add practice status active there by clicking on that checkbox. Okay, so stay tuned. This will get a little bit of love in that next release, just to make it a little bit more intuitive around the fact that you need to click something to see that patient cohort. Excellent. Let's clear the filters.
And just one last quick question.
Sure.
So does the patient list bring up patients with or without the status recorded? I'm assuming that is based on your clicking one of those selectors. So
yes. Okay, let's do that again. It's the patients who don't have, it's the missing ones. So the ones that you would need to work with. So for example, if I apply that filter there, I'm also going to, so just as it refreshes, and I'm also going to, in this instance, apply the patient status active. So you can see that in this instance, out of that patient cohort, bear with me. So I think everyone's suffering from a bit of slow internet connectivity, even myself at the moment. So, okay. You can see that in this instance, once we've applied those filters, that you have 85.29% recorded with an Indigenous status. But really what you may want to do is you want to see that rest of it, the ones that, to get that higher, even though the RACG accreditation stands at 75% and you've passed, you may want to do some cleanup and tidy up. So if I click on that filter there, it is showing you the 14.71% of patients, or how many patients that are, how many patients that equates to, which would be 1,045.
And just to point out, this is not the flashing you're seeing at the moment is not the same as the what was happening previously. This is just the way that this process works is that it slowly builds up a list of filters, and every time it does, each of those items refresh. It'll stop after a moment, and the final thing will be that it will have selected those patient keys for the patients you need to work with. Yep. I guess the general rule of thumb that we work work with when it comes to selecting patients is what you're selecting is the actionable item. So in this instance, it's about data quality. And so the actionable item there is to look at whose data should be, I guess, remediated, so fixed. Whereas, something like if you're working on the MBS services page, so you want to have a look at how many, item 721s, 723s you claimed over a financial year. The actionable item there is looking at the data that's there. So you'll actually be selecting patients who have had that particular thing. So that's just a general approach that we have to what you're actually selecting. If you keep that in mind, you think about, well, what's the likely activity that people using this page will be looking at. That'll give you a good idea of what you're actually selecting if it's not always apparent.
Perfect. And as a test for that, I'll see if I can, like, for example, gender is very well recorded. As you can see, I don't think there's many patients there at all, but they're going to come up. But if I do select that, you might get a handful of patients with a missing F14. So now if we were to go to the patient list, you should see basically, because gender is a field that's always in the patient list. Just let that refresh there. The amount of smarts behind the scenes to apply those filters, that's why it sometimes takes a little bit of while to refresh, but it's because we're trying to take all the pain out of it by putting all that into the visualization for you. But once again, if I now look at those 14 patients that don't have a gender recorded, we should see, look at that, not specified. So that's, once again, the actionable item there is to then look through those patient records and see why there's no gender specified. Okay, which links to the tab, or links to that gauge that I selected. Okay, and you'd see the same for suburb postcode because they're data quality items as well.
And I will point out my favorite part of that last release, the fact that there's the export button there now in my demo, which you didn't point to, I'm sad to say, but if you did want to then export that list for work, you can hit the export to Excel button and it will give you a nice little Excel document to work with.
Yes, that was a part of the usability function we have with PHNs is we rank what are the highest order of things for development for the next release. And believe it or not, the last release, export to Excel, was #1 on the list. So we got it out there straight away. So that was really cool. And it's made Shane very happy, which is always a good thing as well.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, let's have a look. You know what? I was thinking, Shane, remember that trick that Jamie showed us about locking things? That was pretty cool.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yep.
You think that you use the reports every day and you think you just about know every single scenario of how the reports work. And then sometimes you'll still find those one things you think, gee, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So we actually got shown this by Jamie, which is our director of BI, about this really cool function that Click has. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just show you because it may make your life a bit easier. Even though we do have this Click RACGP and Practice Active patients, what you could do, and I'll just show you, is if you wanted just to say, hey, I only want to see my active patients, what you can do is you can click on the filter. So you know the way the tools work is that you have a filter up here. You can click on that and see that little padlock? If you apply that padlock, it means it actually keeps it there regardless if you clear any filters. I thought that was really cool. So you can have as many of those locks as you want. So now if you go into patients, you've got patient status. I believe you can't clear that. You can't remove it. It's there. So every single page, everything you do. So now I might say, hey, really cool. Let's look at those 20 to 44-year-olds. You can see that has a lock, which means it's not going to go anywhere, but you can continue to add filters. Now, if I was to clear all filters, it keeps the padlock. No, I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, okay. Hopefully everyone finds that as cool as what I did. But it's just handy because sometimes you may have a series of filters you want to apply for a number of queries. So in this instance, you could say, well, fantastic. I want to only look for this whole series of queries, patient status. I might say, you know what? I'm only going to be looking at males for this one. So once again, males. And I might say, you know what? For all my additional filters and searching, I'm going to lock that in there. Cool. So no matter what you do now to this session, it will always have males and active patients filtered. So that's just another little trick. And we like to share these, and I think this is the perfect forum. You are the users of the system, and so as we find things, we like to give them back to you, and just to let you know that sometimes sometimes this is additional functionality that's added to the reporting software. Other times it's just because someone smarter than us has discovered it and told us about it. So that's how it works. To remove the padlock, very easy. Click on it, click to unlock, So another little tip or trick, tips and tricks. What do you reckon, Shane? We'll call it the tips and tricks section.
Tips and tricks, yeah,
tips
absolutely.
And tricks. Awesome. That was handy. So yeah, I do digress, but I remember thinking, geez, I've got to show people that one because that was pretty cool. And now if I clear filters, you can see once you've removed that padlock, it's finished, and there's no limit to how many of those padlocks you can have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got a question. Will it work on the export page? So I assume that's talking about the patient list. It will hold the filters when you go across, yes. Mm-hmm. But do you mind just going over to the patient list briefly there, Jason?
Shall I put some padlocks back on? What do you reckon?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's go.
Because not forgetting this so the functionality behind the patient list is it's all based on what you're doing in the rest of the report, the body of the report. So you're doing your filtering on the patients in the data set, and then of course the patient list is how you get that data back out again. So here it goes. Jason adds those. So you will absolutely get those filters will stay there because of the padlock. And whatever you've got in that filter list will affect this list here. So yes, absolutely will work in there. If what you
can
mean,
see the patient status there, yeah,
absolutely. If what you mean is, can you use padlocks on these columns? The answer is, I don't think so. Sorry, bear in mind, sorry, Jason, this is slightly different to the production patient list, hence why I've got the export button there.
Cool, thanks, Shane.
Because the patient list is actually a function of our extraction tool, not Qlik, I don't believe it'll work within that report, but certainly whatever filters you've put into Qlik itself in the report will certainly stay there, and we'll filter those patients, yes.
Excellent. Okay, so a nice little trick there, that padlock function. So what I'm going to do now is, you know what? Should we keep the padlock there, Shane, for a little while? No.
Yeah, why not? Leave the patient active.
Yeah, okay, let's remove that one. So just remember to click on it again, click to unlock, and away you go. Big thanks to Jamie for teaching me that one. Love it. Okay, let's move that one. So the other page that got lots and lots of attention was the diagnosis page in the last release. That's why it's got that beta there as part of the new release. So the feedback that came via usability was that the old sheet, which looked like this, wasn't intuitive as to the relationship between the diagnosis group and the chronic disease category. Now, the reason that was, I should say, is because they are totally two different concepts. There's no link between a diagnosis group and a chronic disease. The link is chronic disease to SNOMED to GP diagnosis, and diagnosis grouping to SNOMED to GP diagnosis. Now, because it was all on one sheet, some people were saying, well, if I choose cardiovascular here, I should only see cardiovascular over there, and it's not always the case. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. So therefore, it added a level of confusion, because you can see that that patient cohort for cardiovascular here is a handful that also have disability and procedures. So to try and avoid some of the confusion around that, what we did is we started to split this sheet up into multiple sheets. The first one being the diagnosis grouping sheet, okay, which is in this instance removing the chronic disease graph. So this is a structure where it's diagnosis group to SNOMED to GP diagnosis, and they are all linked together. So once again, working backwards, we look at mental health here. You can see all your SNOMED mental health groupings as it refreshes there. Let's look at anxiety, let's look at stress. Move that one there. And then once again, of course, there is a logical link between stress and how it's been recorded in the GP software there. Okay, perfect. Okay, and if you wanted to look at your chronic diseases now, let's remove some of those. We've got a little tab there for you as well. So once again, similar kind of structure. where you have, once I click the tab, you can see that you've got now your mental health is your top level, not your mental health, sorry, your chronic disease category is your top level, into SNOMED, into GP diagnosis. Works exactly the same way there. In this instance, let's tick on respiratory. Look at our respiratory chronic disease. Once again, you can filter it further by active diagnosis, yes or no. And then, of course, you can then go into respiratory and then sleep apnea and so forth. Okay, so that was to try and basically get rid of some of the confusion about the link between chronic disease and the higher order diagnosis. Okay, we also added some other pages in there. So you've got a very basic diagnosis. This is one that we know practices love. Let me just remove respiratory. Because this is very much, this is what we record in the practice. This is what Outcome Health do to it in regards to SNOMED mapping. So, once again, if you wanted to see, all the sinusitis grouping, you can see this is all the different ways that sinusitis have been recorded within the practice. It's not too bad. In certain instances there, you would know that probably in diabetes and some other kind of more complex chronic diseases, there could be quite a few different ways that it gets recorded in the clinical information system. Okay, fantastic. And of course, no report is complete without some explanations around it. So we put a bit of an explanation to how it works. You see if you don't get hover text. So this is a bit of an idea of how it works there. We also put some really cool duplicate detection in there. Shane, did you want to talk through some of the smarts that we put into this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So this page is designed to tackle this at two different levels. So the table on the left is a patient level duplicate detector. So for example, here we can see that Trenton Mullen has 84 active diagnoses for insomnia. That's
wow.
awfully high.
That's huge.
Absolutely. However, we can see underneath there as well, Jesse Olsen has 72 duplications of wound care, but you'll note that none of them are active. So obviously, I'd say Jesse probably riding horses or dirt bikes or something, because a lot of wounds coming through, but thankfully none of them are active at this moment. So that one's really good at looking at duplicates across a single patient. However, the one on the right is looking at your most frequently duplicated diagnoses. So that's looking at taking it from a diagnosis level rather than a patient level. So for example, here we can see that there's 221 patients with hypertension as a duplicated diagnosis. So if you just look that for me, please, Jason, you should see the table on the left now will filter down to just the patients with that particular diagnosis duplicated. And I'd say probably the most useful aspect for sorting this one is actually sort by the right-hand column number of active duplicate diagnoses, if you don't mind, Jason.
Sorry, what was that? Sort by this one there?
Yeah, yep. So just descending. Sure. Great. So we can see there, Michael Navarro has 19 instances of hypertensive disorder, which are active. So obviously quite a number of diagnoses there that could be inactivated or deactivated, just to clean up his medical record. And then you go down the list. I laugh at the fact that down the middle there somewhere is Christopher Pierce, different spelling, but that's our director of research.
This is all pretend. This is all dummy data. It's just randomly generated names, but yeah,
caught my eye.
Name.
Exactly.
Sure, you're not going to fight a Jason Ferrugi there. That's for sure. What's the chances of getting me in there? I reckon. That's a randomly generated name.
So yeah, so two different ways of approaching this. One being obviously the patient, and the other being the diagnosis. But I guess each have their own place. How you want to approach those. So yeah, that's how that one is.
Yes. So the use cases for that, Shane, you reckon it's really about trying to clean up your data quality?
Very much.
Just, yeah.
Very much so. Yes. Obviously, the more the cleaner the data is, the easier it is for you to actually, for a GP, I guess, to work with it. So not having to trawl through 19 instances of hypertensive disorder, you can just have the single one there. It makes especially things like summary, viewing, and I guess my health record uploading as well, for that matter, a lot simpler, because you don't need to then go through and take those additional duplicates out of your consideration. So yeah, that's probably the primary one, is about data quality.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. A couple of other things I wanted to show you there. Sand keys. For those not familiar with the sand key, we wanted to chuck a couple of those in there for you. So you have a sand key for higher level diagnosis and a sand key for chronic disease. So what we try and show you here is the flow. So if you think about in these original kind of pages we showed you, there was a list of a particular diagnosis. These ones are basically trying to put a group around it to show how the structure flows. So in instance, if we look at, let's look at the musculoskeletal system and select it, you can see how that higher order group maps to a SNOMED and then maps into a CIS diagnosis. So did I do that right, Shane? Yes, I did. Here we go.
Yes.
So slow. So you can see in this instance that the higher order group, or HLA group, of a musculoskeletal system maps mostly into others in a SNOMED, because you can see that the thickness of the band there shows you the count. So you can see that it was 2,126 times it was mapped there. It also maps into osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and so forth. Once again, yeah, sorry, Shane?
Sorry, I should point out, so the reason why others is so big, you can actually continue drilling down. So basically, if you just pretend others isn't there.
Oh, okay. So don't click it.
Just for a moment, although I think you're going to remove that. You just click outside of it.
You told me, you said, look at others. So what do you think I was going to do? You know I was going to select it. You said, Jason, don't select others. And now I'm going to talk about it, and it would have been fine.
You can click on it in a moment. So okay. if you remove that from your consideration, so the most prevalent thing that's been mapped is osteoarthritis, and it goes down the list. Obviously, we can only show a certain number at any given time. So we summarize the ones that are at the lowest end of the list into the others category. So now you can absolutely click on others for me, please, Jason. And it should
really? You sure?
Further.
Okay, absolutely. Fantastic. Thanks, Shane. Okay, clicking on others.
Although I've never actually explored where this pit ends. I've clicked on it a few times, but I don't know how deep it goes. But it should be, so all of the other diagnoses underneath that one should disappear. And then a fresh number. Yep, there you go. So now we've got fracture, rotator cuff, etc. So you could continue clicking that others, and that will take you to the ones that sit even further down the list.
Oh wow!
In order of prevalence.
It really is a kind of rabbit hole.
Yeah. Give you an idea of the scope of the amount of mapping that there is.
Yeah.
There's a very significant amount. Yep.
Some people really respond well to visual views around this. So that's why these sand keys are in there. But for example, in this instance, it also shows you how it's been coded into practice. So for example, if I was to put in bursitis, there you can see from the practice perspective, bursitis, which of course goes up to musculoskeletal, it goes into bursitis here. You had 48 instances in your GP system. And you also had this one here, which is, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that second word, Shane.
Trochanteric.
Sounds like a plan. Yep, fantastic. So we had 11 instances there. So once again, showing you the same kind of concept, but sometimes responding to a visual view of it, in regards to the thicknesses of the line to show you where most of them are going is just another way to view the data. Yeah, so that's a Sankey diagram. And there's one for there. Let me clear the filters. And there's also one for chronic disease, if you wanted to use in the same way, just to have a bit of a look how your chronic disease gets mapped from the higher order SNOMED right through to the SNOMED text. Excellent. And for people who get a bit homesick and love the page that was in there, we've kept the advanced diagnosis, which I mentioned at the start. So if you're happy with that page, you can just jump on that one straight away. So that was probably the page you got the most love, do you reckon, Shane? The clinical indicators got a fair bit, and then the diagnosis got a workaround, yeah?
Definitely in terms of the magnitude of what had to be done, this one was probably at the top. That duplicate detector especially is very complex, so that took quite an amount of time, getting the logic right.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a fair bit of work. There's been some interest around trying to add another potential component to this page around what's unmapped within a practice. So we'll probably stay tuned and see if that goes into that next release for you to do a bit of work. But the feedback we get is, data quality, cleaning up systems, is always a big priority for practices to try and get on top of. So we try and do what we can in Polar to make that as easy as possible. Hence, you'll see some changes like that from time to time. Excellent. Just thinking about other things that are topical at the moment, Shane. Anything else that we can?
Well, it is the eve of the PipQI data submission.
It is.
So, I mean, it's always worth mentioning the data submission indicator on the dashboard, I think, if you can quickly pop
Of
across
course.
to there.
Yeah,
Just for
exactly right.
those.
So if you want to know whether that data has been received by the PHN in regards to PipQI, so I've just clicked back on the dashboard. And you can see here that for this practice, you are PipQI compliant for this quarter, 2020 quarter 4.
Absolutely.
The cutoff date is tomorrow night, 12 midnight. So
Yep.
yeah, exactly. If that wasn't, it would be red, Shane, is that right?
Well, at the moment, it would be sort of like that expired care plan. I think it's that sort of color, sort of a yellowy orange, just to indicate that you're within the quarter, so you still have a chance. But as of the 16th of October, it will go red because you cannot lodge your data after that period. So just keep that in mind. It does, of course, as well tell you underneath the last time your data was extracted, the last successful extraction date. That's always useful for PipQI, but I guess generally as well, just to check on the currency of your data. Obviously, this demo report is only loaded weekly, but yours should be happening, sort of every 24 hours. There should be a cycle of it happening. So hopefully that date is, sort of the day prior. Yeah,
exactly.
Worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and it's always actually it raises an interesting conversation. Some practices who really get into their data quality, which is fantastic, will see this report. They'll jump on, for example, let's go through a bit of a use case there where they'll jump quickly onto. Oh, there we go. Oh, where am I? Damn, I'll find it. Sorry. Bear with me. That's what I was looking for. I knew I'd get there eventually, Shane. So you'll get your cohort of patients. You're all excited, and you say, you know what? Let's look at these gender ones here, because we get these queries come back to us quite a lot. And the first thing that people will generally say is, "Oh, the data in Polar is incorrect." So here you'll see, hey, I've got 262 patients who don't have a gender recorded. Okay, I didn't apply any additional filters other than the padlock of active patients. And so you will now go into your clinical information system and you will start entering where you can a gender for this patient cohort. And you might spend the whole afternoon entering all this information. And then you will then log back into Polar. And then you'll say, but hold it, I've still got a list of 242 patients. What's going on there? Why is that the case? And it's because of that, as Shane mentioned, there's a time lag. There's a 24-hour turnaround. So anything that you entered into your clinical information system today, for example, will be reflected into your report tomorrow in most
or at
instances.
least within a 24-hour period.
That's
so bear in
24-hour
mind,
cycle.
if you time it exactly right and you update something, you could even find that it's changed within the hour. If you just happen to catch it before a refresh, but of course, up to 24 hours it should be.
Yeah, so in most instances, we'll say, hey, it's not that Polar's broken, it's just hasn't had a chance to get that refreshed data. So just keep it in mind, especially people, as I said, who get really heavily invested into data quality. You think, oh, I've just spent the whole afternoon, but guess what? I've got my patient cohort of missing gender down to none. Well done. And then you'll go back in here and still see that. But tomorrow, you should see big 100% compliance. So that's the plan. Yeah, so sometimes that's a gotcha. And especially, as we've had a brand new PHN join the Polar family this year, just understanding some of the idiosyncrasies on how the data extraction works, the timing around how reports go, it sometimes is a bit of a learning curve understanding it. But once you kind of know the way the report, flows from the practice to Polar and back to yourselves, that becomes completely transparent. So it's good. Okay, any other questions from the audience out there?
None so far.
Got Shane and I all to yourself. What other way would you like to spend the afternoon and to ask us questions?
Out in the sun.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Okay.
I'm sure many people would come up with that answer.
Really? I'd prefer to be
Versus
watching a
listening
polar
to
report.
us.
Shane.
Oh, okay. No, you're right.
I think you're selling us a bit short there, mate. I'm not very happy about that. Excellent.
I'm seeing no chats, no questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Everyone's
Sure.
on board.
Okay, it's excellent. I'm just going to remove that padlock before I forget. But if you do close the report and go back in, the padlock won't be there, just as a fail-proof method.
Yeah.
A fail-safe, I should say. That was the word I was looking for, just to click unlock it. I'm just trying to think, are there any other tips or tricks?
I do want to just raise one little thing. So
Sure.
really realized last week sometime that for the clinical indicators report, because it was slightly changed, the way the data model worked, you should notice it's significantly faster as well as having those new enhancements. If you previously had built yourself a bookmark in this report, you might just need to check to make sure, because some of these underlying fields slightly change, which means they get dropped from anything that has them as part of the bookmark. So it's just worthwhile, if you have got your own bookmark in that bookmark list, just to go in and make sure it's still adding all the filters you need. If not, you might need to edit it or create a new bookmark.
Okay. Is there a way? So basically, is there a way they'll be able to tell, Shane? If I was to choose.
Yeah. So if you click on that Zostavax one.
Yep.
So that's a really good example. I've got to go and fix that bookmark up because I know that the criteria for this one was around the age banding, and it was also excluding patients who'd had a Zostavax vaccination. So you'll see in the top top of the screen, it says text age band. So it's got the ages selected, but there's no mention of the exclusion filter. So that one needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah, perfect. So that's a really good way to check. So you know that there's going to be additional filters there. If any of those filters are missing, that means unfortunately that bookmark's broken. So you do need to go. So if we were to go back and then enter that in, we could save it as a new bookmark and it'll be working.
Absolutely, yeah. And just a little hint for me when I create my bookmarks. So if you don't mind, Jace, just go up to the top there. In fact, yeah, that's fine. Yep. Just go up to bookmarks and create.
Yeah, sure.
So in your list, you'll have the
create a bookmark?
Yes, please. Yep.
Excellent.
So you'll have the title. That will be the what will appear in that menu. Give it a description enough that you know exactly what it should be doing. Because it's hard to know. So I know Zostavax because that one's my primary example when I come into this report. But if I was coming in and it just said Rotarix, I wouldn't necessarily know what it was I was trying to achieve. Whether I'm looking for patients who had a Rotarix vaccination, people who hadn't had one, not sure. So it's worthwhile just giving it a really meaningful title so you actually know what it is going to do.
Something like that's probably not the best one, Shane.
Not
Testing?
at all. Not even close. So and I will
don't
admit to being, I usually do demo and then that's it, which isn't overly explanatory. But certainly if you're going to add them in, give them something meaningful and just check to make sure that they're still working as expected.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Apologies if we've in trying to make clinical indicators better, faster, and as I said, hopefully that merge to the one fantastic report will be the way to go in the future. But if we've accidentally broken any of your bookmarks, apologies. Hopefully it won't take you too long to get them up and running again.
I think we still have on the radar the bookmark enhancement at some stage as well.
Yeah, definitely. We've had some, bookmarks are great, and I think some practices have used them quite extensively. For people, a bit of a 101, just if you haven't run into a bookmark, I always think there are some probably new people that think, hold it, what are you talking about there? A bookmark is basically just a series of filters that you save in order to save yourself some time. We've got 4 minutes left. I will do a record fast bookmark. Okay, I'm going to click on bookmarks. I'm going to go create bookmark. Actually, you can create it from current selection, Shane. I forgot about that one.
That was the only way you can do it. So you need to select first.
Oh, of course. Definitely. Sorry. You can tell I use bookmarks a lot. Thanks, Shane. So let's go through and do a quick bookmark. So what I'm going to do is do RACGP active, tick. I'm going to say this is for males, tick. These are for people on a healthcare card, tick. These are for people who are age 70 to 85. Tick. I've applied quite a lot of filters there. I'm down to 8. I better be scared. I better just go and pick one diagnosis. What do you reckon? Who don't have
cardiovascular? No, they all have.
No, what do you reckon? Don't have conjoint?
That's a pretty common. I'll give it a respiratory condition.
Respiratory. Who don't have a respiratory? No, they all do. Is that correct?
Oh, so you want to exclude some? Then cardiovascular. Yep.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay.
May exclude everyone though.
And do not have. Hey, perfect. Look at that. Who do not have a cardiovascular disease. So we've got 3 people who fit into that cohort. So you can see that you've clicked a lot of filters there. Just notice a green dot there. A lot of filters there. So basically, in order, and if you wanted to do this, say you're doing a piece of work regularly on this filter set, and you got to click these again, you can now go into bookmarks. You can now create a bookmark from current selection. You can give this one a very long description, but with 2 minutes remaining, and my typing not being the fastest.
75
males,
plus. No cardiovascular.
Oh, you're putting me on the pressure. Yep. Males 75 plus, yeah.
No CVD.
No CVD. That's the way you name a bookmark. And you go create.
I mean, you'll have to remember about the healthcare card, but
yeah, okay.
That's right.
It's okay. So anyway, you've done your work. You found those 3 patients. You know, in a month's time, you come back and you say, "Oh, it's time to do that book. You know, it's time to do that. You know, bit of piece of work again." What were those filters? Instead of having to go through inclusion, exclusions, hey presto, bookmarks are there. Click on that, and just like magic, they're all back for you again. Of course, probably that number may change, may not, depending on what you've done with that cohort. So you may have then gone and given them a cardiovascular disease or done something with them, of course. But yeah, of course, it's just an easy way for you to get a whole heap of bookmarks very fast. So that's a 101 on bookmarks. Just thought I'd take advantage. But in regards to some future development in that space, putting bookmarks into groupings is something that we really want to do to make it easier. Just note too, the bookmarks can't be shared at the moment. So if you create a bookmark for you, no one else in your practice can see that bookmark. They are specific to the user login. So potential maybe to even share bookmarks could be a way in the future when we look at doing some enhancements in the bookmark space. But stay tuned, you can use them in that current format, and hopefully you have been, and apologies if they've accidentally broken in clinical indicators because of that rework that we've done. Okay, Shane, it's getting close to, it has just hit 2 o'clock. Are there any last questions for us today? Sorry if we're a little bit late, apologies. So we're happy to hang around if you do have any questions. No, I think we're good. Shane, anything there? I may have lost Shane. Let me just check. Okay, no worries. I think, Shane, did I lose you for a bit?
Hello.
Yeah, did I lose you?
No, you're fine. Sorry. I don't know what was going on with mine. My mic wasn't working.
I thought you'd lost me. I thought
no
you'd
more
ditched
questions.
me. No more questions. So that's 2 o'clock again. Apologies for being a bit late, but hope you have a fantastic day. And feel free. We've got one more, our last polar Q&A for November. So we're going to make it a big one. Put it in the calendar, 11th of November. We'll stick this one up as a recording today, but yeah, look forward to having our Christmas special. Okay, so that's the Christmas special polar release Q&A session, 11th of November.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
bells and whistles.
Definitely. Well, everyone have a fantastic day. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice. Bye-bye.
Bye.